Hey everyone, it's Fitz with the Daily Delivery. I hope you're doing well. And I hope you've listened to this week's PowerCat podcast. It went up at midnight. What does that be? Wednesday, Thursday? It's a really interesting episode. There's a lot of things going on with K-State sports that I think fans are a little bit fired up about. And honestly, I got fired up during the podcast. So there's a lot of ranting going on, a lot of me pontificating, which is one of my skill sets. One of the topics brought up, and this was at the very end of the podcast, was about Seth Davis saying the job Scott Drew has done at Baylor is the greatest rebuild in college sports history. Not basketball, sports. Now, as a K-Stater, naturally, you say Bill Snyder and football. I think as an educated college sports fan, you say that. But I'm going to take a little bit different approach here real quick in my final 2 minutes of this delivery to address it from a different angle. You really can't compare basketball and football. Here's why. Football is very definitive. It's like reading a novel, and you need to have all the chapters to have a really good book at the end. You can't just have a good finish and say it was a good book or movie. It has to be a complete piece of work. There's 12 chapters typically in this book, and then you might get into the postseason with bowl and playoff. The whole thing has to go together, and it's really not easy for a school such as Kansas State to get to the highest level and be that bestseller, win a national championship. Basketball's different. Kansas State's getting ready to go into the Big 12 tournament next week. It doesn't really matter what they've done this season or what they do in Saturday's game against Iowa State. They'll win, I think. Once they start the Big 12 tournament, and because of their seeding, they'd have to win 4 games to win the Big 12 championship, that would make them conference champions. Doesn't matter if they won 2 games or 20 games prior to that tournament. You win those 4 in Kansas City, you're in the NCAA tournament. And if you're in the main field of 64, because the first 4 stinks, but you are 6 wins away from being national champion. So basketball is totally different. Everything is open at the end of the season. You can win 10 games in a row and be national champion if you're Kansas State. But if you lose a bunch of games at the start of football, it doesn't matter. They're just completely different sports. Look, if you want to say what's the greatest rebuilding job in college sports history, it has to be Bill Snyder with football, because football's so difficult to pick a program up from nothing and make it something. Basketball, you're 1 or 2 good recruiting classes away from completely redefining yourself. You can beat George Mason or Wichita State and get to the Final Four. It's football, but they're also completely different. Sorry, Seth, you're just wrong on this one.